as we get closer and closer to another government shutdown. They're reporting on it that the economy is going to tank, just like what we've been telling you. That they're going to tank the economy. They're going to pretty much, out of that chaos, they're going to introduce a new stable coin, because Donald Trump has already signed off on it. Remember the Genius Act passed last year? Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Double honors the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth and sincerity. And shout out the Akins out there in the four corners of the earth proclaim this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatem. Better buckle up, because the economy is going to crash, and they're saying it, just like we've been saying it.
Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and Mark Rubio just admitted the quiet part out loud in an interview, but with, of course, the only station he does interviews with, it seems, Fox News. So, let's hear what he says about the collapse of the U.S. dollar.
Today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years, because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
So there you have it, my friends. He's admitting exactly what we've been warning of for a very long time. And this comes shortly after Donald Trump says that a weakened dollar is good for America. We reported on that recently in a video we did with Mark Gonzalez regarding also the new Fed chair, who, of course, is a Bilderberger and someone who is heavily involved with what they would call the deep state. Again, we have a lot to go into today, because the news of this shift into the Chinese order, which we've talked about in recent times at the World Economic Forum, they've been openly acknowledging that the old world is collapsing. Trump is bringing down the old world. Yeah, that sounds like a good deal, getting rid of the old world order, but it's to replace it with a new world order, which is on the side of the East. From the west to the East, we're seeing power shift towards China, towards BRICS, and there is a lot that is happening right now regarding BRICS, and with China reserving gold, more than 74 million ounces with a worth of over $367 billion, as Russia has $400 billion of gold for the first time, and as we see the shift towards the yuan being used as a global payment, which of course will be digital despite the gold. So we want to go into this and more today, my friends. Before we do, I urge you to check that link below. First,
here we go. The old warlord is going to go, so they got to bring in a new one.
Also, thank you to those who've donated. Yes, this campaign for GoGetFunding.com, address ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com, our Bitcoin address here on the screen as well, which you can scan or check out below while we're playing this. Let's hear this one more time.
Today, Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years, because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
He's basically saying the dollar is done. The dollar is dead. And, of course, that was Marco Rubio, of course, Secretary of State, and he, well, one of the guys who helped arm and fund ISIL and ISIS back in the early 2010s, with John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and, of course, with the help of the support of Obama. Now, the dollar is dying. Trump has recently said that a weak dollar is good for the economy, which is crazy because the economy is the dollar. And then, of course, what he's saying could be true if we're talking about trade and the markets. Yes, a weak dollar could be good in competition with other countries when it comes to trade. But for the actual consumer, the person going to the grocery store, absolutely it is not, and your life savings get weaker and lesser as the days go by. Always devaluing. All fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero. They always have, they always will, going back to 1024 AD in China. This is an astonishing statement, because as I've said for a long time, eventually they'll just acknowledge it. They'll just admit to it. They'll say for years that everything's going fine. I mean, under Biden, we had Janet Yellen as a Treasury Secretary going and meeting the Chinese. And, of course, it turned out that she ended up doing a bunch of magic mushrooms while meeting with them. That was interesting. She didn't seem like the type, right? But this was just basically a demoralizing factor in the downfall of the Western order in favor of the Eastern order. I've talked for a long time, social media companies meeting with the Chinese despite China banning their sites in their country, because they are utilized in order to demoralize the West and get everyone in the West to give up all their information. As I've said for a long time, and I have to rephrase it quickly for those who don't know. If you go back to the 1970s, okay, first of all, in 1948, after the attacks on Pearl Harbor in 45, fast forward to the attack on, not 45, the attack on Japan in 45, the atom bomb and all that kind of stuff, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Fast forward to Japan falling to their knees after years of dominating China. China being propped up, 1948, and massive starvation events leading to something very interesting happening in 1971-72. Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong to create an alliance with China to prop them up as a monopoly on trade to save them from their economic collapse. Because again, the West has always propped up the people that will then eventually replace them. It was always by design. It's been happening for a long time. The script was written long ago. Okay, so then we have also just a couple years earlier.
Just like these scriptures were written long ago.
President of France at the time.
Everything will come to pass in our time.
Harbor demanding their gold be repatriated, and Nixon said, well, we don't have your gold. Because they didn't actually have the gold in Fort Knox that they claimed. So that leads to them shifting off the gold standard into the fiat currency system, and then we see the Kissinger again meeting with the Saudi crown prince and creating the petrodollar system agreement for the dollar to be world reserve currency based on oil. That's where the faith came from, even though it wasn't real. It was all debt. They fractional reserve. They print more than they have. Someone owes you $1 and they print $1. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Goes in a circle forever. Then we see the creation of the Trilateral Commission with the Rockefellers and, of course, Zbigniew Brzezinski. We recently found out that Jeffrey Epstein was a major member of the Trilateral Commission and the Rockefeller Foundation, despite no one knowing who he was and him coming out of nowhere, because it's an intelligence agency apparatus to control the world and force the world into technocracy. I have a book here called Trilaterals Over Washington, Volumes 1 and 2 by Patrick Wood and Anthony C. Sutton, which goes into this. And, of course, China's propped up as a guinea pig state for technocracy. And we've seen that back going to the early 2010s. China reaches this point where suddenly they are this superpower. They have Sesame credit, as we know, is social credit. They have facial recognition everywhere now. They have robots on the street, robot police, literally RoboCop. Where's Kurtwood Smith when you need him? Bad reference. Anyway, when you have this system being propped up, eventually the idea is that the West will then succumb to it itself. Out of necessity, even if it wasn't all falsified, it would happen eventually. But it was falsified. It was created as that bridge. So when one system collapses, they already have a system ready as a so-called solution to it. Tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, and this will be a convenient system. So this is all by design, and it was always going to get to the point where eventually you have the West acknowledging the shift into the East, while pretending to struggle and push back and kick back. It's just not real. Trump's meeting, I believe in April, with Xi Jinping. It's all veneer. It's all
dog and pony
shows. It's a concrete building with a brick veneer. The building is not made out of a brick. It's made out of concrete. The brick is just for appeal, for veneer, for the facade.
Yep,
that's what we're seeing as a facade right now. Again, the social media companies now, with them saying in the United States you need 5 years of social media to enter the country, that's social credit. That is social credit, and that is exactly how they've utilized these social media companies in order to move into that Chinese system as they meet with the Chinese government, even though they're not allowed in that country. It was always part of that Shanghaiing of the public, utilizing convenience and fun and addiction, scrolling through, the most awful things. Or cat videos, for that matter, too, which isn't so awful, but all the same, part of the same agenda. Keep us staring at our screens and giving up all of our information. Now, this is happening as the Chinese yuan hits highest level against US dollar since May 2023. We have the Canadian trade deal, the UK trade deal, and many others right now, where we also have, and I mentioned Saudi Arabia before, with the petrodollar system, now full circle, Saudi Arabia is talking about joining BRICS, and they have been pushing the AI system with Trump, as
they already has
already joined BRICS. And BRICS is, of course, for those who don't know, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, though now Egypt is involved, and countless other countries around the world are involved. So when Marco Rubio talks about Brazil, well, Brazil is part of that Chinese system already, my friends. Has been for quite some time. Now, we have those outliers that are still benefiting the system without knowing it sometimes, or perhaps it's all theater, I don't know. But Nicolas Maduro, who, of course, was saying that he didn't want to use the US dollar anymore and wanted to trade.
There you go, there's why. But there's more to this.
Kind of things, and then we know what happened to him. As we knew what happened to Gaddafi in Libya and what happened to Saddam Hussein. But this is part of the literal shift. China instructs banks to reduce U.S. Treasury holdings. Another big story where we are seeing it on full display. That story is happening. China gold reserves surpassed 74 million ounces, worth over $367 billion. Incredible. We have Russia's gold reserves surpassing $400 billion for the first time in history. Absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, before we get to the rest of this, I should mention, and you can find it on our channel, I think it was May 2016, so about 10 years ago, I confronted Bill Morneau, at that time the finance minister of Canada, on selling off all Canada's gold, and asked him why, because Venezuela had done the same thing. So I asked, why are you doing that? That is the death knell of the economy. That is how you put the final nail in the coffin of the Canadian economy. And he said, oh, well, gold isn't really needed. It's not necessary. It's just something people like because it's shiny. Like, no, it's not just something people like because it's shiny. It's used in countless electronics. It's incredibly valuable due to scarcity. Scarcity demand leads to, of course, value. This is the history of money. Whereas the amount of printing that they do of the dollar leads to less value because there's no scarcity. This is basic economics 101, but of course Bill Morneau was a finance minister of Canada. He left the government in disgrace a couple years after that confrontation. But nonetheless.
So you see where it is. The U.S. dollar is dead. It doesn't have its pull anymore, all done by design because, yes, the West will move into the East and they'll have a new world order, and so, you know, can govern all the people, right? As George Bush put it, man. A new world order where United Nations will rise. Jade Helm means army after next. Who do you think that army is? That's the UN. The UN is the army after next. And like everything else, though, you know, through everything else that Trump is doing deliberately, he's put there for a reason, to set tariffs and to just continue that free fall. And like everything else, though, you know, what's going to happen is they're going to all dump U.S. treasuries, as China has instructed, all on purpose, all on design. So that way they can usher in the new digital system, which is ready to go. The microchip is ready to go. And they're going to require everyone to have it in order to be able to buy and sell. You know, if you hadn't caught yesterday's video. It's a no-brainer where we're going with this, you know. And like everything else, though, you either get with the program or don't listen to anybody who ain't teaching that the MOTB is the implantable microchip. And we got another fake shooting, right? I say fake because if it's all over the mainstream, then it's definitely fake. But not happening in the U.S., happening in Canada, which already has draconian laws and gun control laws, right? Because they always do shit like this and try to take the guns, you know. But like everything else, though, this is in Canada. But you know that some politicians will be there about why everybody needs to disarm. 10 dead, 25 injured after school shooting in Canada. Another school shooting. Another Sandy hoax. At least 10 people dead and 25 injured after mass shooting in northern British Columbia, according to the Pigs. Pigs have detained the shooter, but would not be releasing details at the time for privacy reasons. Yeah, privacy reasons. Yeah, right. So, like everything else, though, you know, this is about an economy that tanked. In the late 70s, the population rapidly, you know, we're talking about the place where the shooting took place, right? Tumbler Ridge. In the late 70s, the population rapidly boomed with the discovery of coal deposits in the area, and it became a classic company town throughout the 1980s. A near collapse followed in the 2000s when those mines shut down. It was during this time that the economy pivoted to tourism, making itself the land of dinosaurs and waterfalls, a place where you can hike and see ancient footprints in the wilderness. So they turned it into a tourist attraction. But like everything else, though, you know, now pigs are going door to door looking for the so-called shooter, right? In the days ahead, we know the difficult for many process statement reads. Please check in. Pigs say they don't believe there are any other suspects or any ongoing risk to the public. Yep, but they can't seem to find them. Interesting. And then you got this assassination attempt now. This is definitely Mossad, and you can definitely say CIA attempted to assassinate the Colombian president. Isn't that convenient? Just right after Trump just threatened him, you know, after taking Venezuela. Colombian president reports assassination attempt. The alleged plot comes after a senator escaped a kidnapping attempt in the run-up to elections. Colombian President Petro has claimed that he survived an assassination attempt following months of warnings about an alleged plot by drug traffickers to target him. During a live-streamed cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Petro said that the hours earlier that he was in a helicopter with his daughters and was unable to land at a destination. The Colombian Department of Corona on the Caribbean coast due to fears that unidentified individuals were going to shoot. So he pretty much bypassed it. You know, like everything else though, when you go against the West, you know, especially if you live close enough to the West, yeah, you're a target, all right. Because look at what happened to Maduro. Now that's going to be the standard for some time. Being shamed and brought to an American court when he's not even American to begin with. And this is a Venezuela issue, not an American issue. But who the fuck is America to tell the rest of the world to run their country when they can't run their own? And they're going to go into a shutdown anyways. But like everything else though, you got Frankenpork, you know, going on because beef has been banned from campuses. While they got gene-edited Frankenpork going on. You know, they tell you not to eat abominable foods, and like everything else though, you know, you want to still continue to eat abominable foods, well, it's going to be forced upon you. A lot of things are going to have pork without them even putting it on the label. You know, for those of you that enjoy disobeying the Most High.
Holy cow, folks. The globalist food police are coming for your plates harder than ever. So today, I'm going to rip the mask off these two latest assaults on real food and freedom. First of all, we've got Polytechnique Montreal, an elite engineering school tied to the University of Montreal, who just straight up banned beef on every single cafeteria on campus. No more steaks, no more burgers or ribeyes for the future builders of society. So why are they doing this, you might be asking? Well, it's to heroically slash their own carbon footprint by a whopping, wait for it, potentially 1% overall. Wow. Groundbreaking stuff. They also claim that this slashes their food emissions by 50% because beef supposedly pumps out 10 times the carbon as chicken. And according to their sustainability director, this move aligns with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, and it's part of a broader push to go net zero by 2040. But let's be real, guys. This isn't about saving the planet. It's about controlling what you eat. Beef has been a staple for centuries, packed with nutrients. But now it's the villain because cows fart methane. Meanwhile, they're promoting plant-based alternatives that are often ultra-processed junk, loaded with chemicals. This is the first university in North America to pull this stunt. And it's pure virtue-signaling tyranny. But newsflash, guys, this isn't saving Earth. It's training the next generation to obey Big Brother. When it says, eat the bugs, peasant, students deserve choice. Not this top-down climate cult nonsense dictated by UN puppets. It makes me want to channel my inner Alex Jones, eating twice as much meat so a vegan out there isn't making a difference. And as if all this wasn't bad enough, Canada approves genetically modified pork for human consumption. Genetically altered pork may not be welcome, according to a survey that found 74% of Canadians believe cloned meat and genetic editing practices have no place in farm and food systems. These come with no mandatory labels. You won't even know if that bacon or ham you are buying is coming from these lab-tweaked animals.
Pork
and there's been no real independent long-term studies. It's just, trust us, bro. This is the same government that paused clone meat policies, only after public backlash. But they keep pushing gene editing through the back door. They want you eating synthetic garbage, while the elite feast on grass-fed ribeye at Cabo.
Right?
It's not innovation, guys. It's depopulation, disguised as progress. They're banning real beef at universities to demonize it. Then, they flood the market with GMO pork that nobody asked for. But the government says it's safe, echoing the same lines they used for GMO salmon and crops. But let's not forget, guys, they told us glyphosate was safe too, until the lawsuits piled up. So, the big question now is, what the heck do we do about this? Especially when you consider that they are ignoring the fact that the majority of Canadians don't want this. Well, for starters, you have to start simple and buy local. Hit up your farmer's market and make friends with them. You need to source grass-fed beef and pork from real farmers. Farmers who aren't playing and dabbling in gene editing labs.
Beef.
Go 100% organic beef, right? Or non-GMO verified. Also, ditch processed junk. It's loaded with hidden soy and additives that are GMO central. Cook from scratch and support small butchers and ranchers who are fighting these policies, and boycott the big chains who are pushing the narrative. And most importantly, start growing your own food. Dive in head first into getting a small backyard garden going, or even just start a herb garden from your balcony or window ledge if you have to. Start anywhere, just as long as you actually start doing it. Because this is a war on farmers, on choice, and on your health. So Don't swallow their lies. Fight back and expose the agenda. Because
Well, we won't tell our people to fight the power, but nonetheless, though, push back, meaning that, okay, you know, you don't have to eat that garbage, you know? Be very careful what you eat. I mean, Apostle Gabar goes into that all the time, but that's what's happening, though, is that, well, there is a famine, right? There's pestilences because of all this gene editing stuff that's in all the food, right? You know, it's here. We're here. We're in the times leading up to the return of Yahweh Shai. Wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places. All those things happening. You know, I mean, hey, Satan Yahoo, King Bibi, is urging Trump to make his attack against Iran. While everybody else was pissed off because Bad Bunny did his Super Bowl halftime show in Spanish. But Kid Rock couldn't even do a really good alternate one. A lot of people really turn on Kid Rock because they call him, they have a special name for him because he was lip syncing, so they call him Hillbilly Vanilli. That's his new name because he's a lip syncer. He's a fake, he's a fraud, just another Trump dick sucker.
So I had a great conversation, a lot of fun with Vito Creed on his podcast.
He probably molests children too.
We connected everything that we're seeing right now, from the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the ensuing cover-up of the Epstein files, Donald Trump being an FBI informant, the war in Iran, how all of this is connected. So make sure that you go and find God, Grit, and Glory on YouTube or anywhere else that podcasts are broadcast. And yeah, FBI informant, that's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has been informing the FBI, and that's why he had to play his role. He had to talk about grabbing girls he had to recruit them for pageants where they're basically topless. He had to joke around and get frustrated and visibly upset that Jeffrey Epstein was stealing his girls from Mar-a-Lago like Virginia Giuffre. That's what he was doing the entire time. And we should have known this when that little weasel Mike Johnson let it slip, that Trump was an FBI informant. This is why he's named over 30,000 times in the Epstein files, where we have learned that, you know, degenerate men, pedophiles were raping kids, they were eating kids, they were murdering and burying them on Zorro Ranch. And the whole time, Trump was doing his part to blow the whole operation up from the inside out. There he was. So for all of you who said that, you know, Donald Trump has been anointed by and chosen by God to lead this country as a Christian crusader and warrior, I guess you were right. He was never a degenerate. He was never handing out presidential endorsements to people like Anna Paulina Luna because she had a better than Laura Loomer. Despite the fact that he said that, that was just him playing his role as an FBI informant. He had to play the part. You know, he had to measure girls' vaginas. He had to do all of these things because he was an undercover informant for the FBI.
Yeah.
You stupid goyim. You ruin it every time. You didn't realize this? So there it is. The case is closed. The mystery has been solved. How implicated is President Trump? Well, he rode in on his white horse, and he took on the entire pedophile cabal, just like Q told us that he would. It's exactly what he did. And he blew the whole thing up from the inside out. For us having these millions of pages of information, and I mean, Donald Trump really played his part here. He really played a top-notch role here. His acting skills, the way that he went back and forth.
I'm sure he's being sarcastic.
The pedophile cabal. You know, he campaigned on this. Was a critical campaign promise. Everybody talked about this. And then all of a sudden, the Epstein files, they didn't exist anymore.
There's his
And he
hero.
got really mad. Remember that? How good his acting was when he got mad and he was like, look, I don't even want your support. And then he had Howard Lutnick behind him making a big joke about all of this, laughing about the Epstein files and their contents. Man, what a stellar knockout performance by Donald Trump, an FBI informant all along. Boy, do I feel dumb. Man. And all my fellow goy, they're scratching their heads like, wow, he really fooled me. This guy is the best informant, the best undercover informant that the FBI could ever have wished for having. I mean, this guy, he takes the cake. So there it is. Donald Trump, FBI informant. Frankie Stocks is in the green room. Can you believe it?
No, not at all. And, you know, when somebody's an FBI informant, aren't they usually someone who's inside of the operation anyway? So, like, for him to have even been an FBI informant, he would have had to have been raping and trafficking and sacrificing kids to be able to speak on this and to be able to say, I've seen Jeffrey Epstein do this, I participated with Jeffrey Epstein in doing this. Like, that's what an informant is. It's so either way, Donald Trump is a big friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. But no, I don't believe at all that he was ever informing on behalf of anyone.
If he was an informant for the FBI, then why would he have told Marjorie Taylor Greene that she was a traitor to America for signing a discharge petition? And why would he have told her that his closest friends would be hurt by that?
Yeah, exactly. He took the cover-up as far as he possibly could. You know, he would want to be a hero. He would want to be known as, I'm the FBI informant. I made all of this happen. But no, he didn't. You know, he was just never.
If he was an
informant.
FBI informant and he wanted all of these people to fry, then why would he be attacking Thomas Massey with such veracity?
Right? No, he wouldn't be. He was never an FBI informant. It's just this is
There
the
it
latest
is.
thing that they've latched
I
on
knew
to.
that was
They had
sarcasm.
Hoax after hoax, trying to distance Trump from Jeffrey Epstein. If anything, if there was anything that made these guys fall out, it was that they were in a bidding war over the same piece of property in the mid-2000s in Palm Beach, and it soured their friendship. That's any sourcing, any reporting on this that's come out over the years. That's the only thing that people can hang on it. Like, this is the problem that Trump had with Jeffrey Epstein. It wasn't that he was trafficking kids. It wasn't that he was stealing girls from Mar-a-Lago, which Trump goes out and like jokes about and say he was stealing girls from Mar-a-Lago. Like, you were supplying him girls at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, they were exchanging those big checks, like when you win the lottery, to say, hey, you know, here's a check for a depreciated girl. And speaking of winning the lottery, Zorro Ranch, Jeffrey Epstein's ranch where they were burying these bodies in New Mexico, it somehow won the lottery in the state of New Mexico. I mean, how the hell does that even happen? Zorro Ranch wins the lottery in New Mexico. The entire story.
I think he actually won the lottery multiple times, but yeah, no. Trump was definitely not an informant to the FBI. All right. I just wanted to get your take on that. 3 minutes is on the clock. The base report starts right now.
Yeah, thanks, Stu. So look, speaking of all of these things being tied together, and we all know where Jeffrey Epstein traces back to, and he's probably living there right now. He's probably enjoying life somewhere
Israeli
in Israel. Well,
state.
just today, it was reported that for the first time since mid-2020, Venezuela has sold oil to Israel. So
There it
just
is.
so happens that the United States goes in, kidnaps Nicolas Maduro, takes over the country, starts handing oil rights over to Jewish
Who could have
millionaires
ever
to
called
donate to
that?
Trump.
Who could have ever guessed that these people would get their way, that they would use American taxpayer-funded gun barrels to go in there, hold everybody hostage, rip the leader of a sovereign nation in the Western Hemisphere out of his country along with his wife in the middle of the night, put him on an aircraft carrier and bring him back to the SDNY, just to exact an oil theft deal on behalf of Paul Singer's Citgo acquisition? Who would have ever thought that now all of a sudden, whoa, you're not allowed to transport oil to Iran. We know that because we hijacked those tankers. You're not allowed to transport oil out of Venezuela to China. We know that because we hijacked those tankers. You're not allowed to transport oil, which the proceeds would go to benefit Russia, who rightly owns the ship, because that's what Netanyahu says. But now, we're sending oil from Venezuela to Israel. Who would have ever guessed that this would happen?
Yep, straight to Israel. It took absolutely no time at all, and now they're pulling it out of the earth, they're refining it, and they're sending it to Israel.
At
Like,
least
this is what
the
this was
flock.
for the entire time. I mean, this was a Jewish resource grab, a Jewish money grab, a Jewish power grab. I mean, that's exactly what we're looking at here, and they just openly report it now, like, oh, hey, by the way, you know, the oil's going to Israel. But yeah, we saw this coming the entire time. I think anybody who was looking at this, like, with reality glasses on, I mean, you've really, it's absurd. It's everything that's a conspiracy theory, everything that's a canard, everything that's a trope. It all comes true after the fact. You know, going into this for months, it's like, yeah, this is an Israeli operation. Hey, maybe we should look and see what are Venezuela's relationships with Israel. Oh, yeah, they're not good. You know, Nicolas Maduro openly speaks out against Israel. Nicolas Maduro openly calls Netanyahu a fake Jew. He's cut off any relations, any trade with Israel. And now
fake
the first
Jew.
order of business is opening
Did
Venezuela.
Maduro know that he was an
Israel,
Israelite?
and they're getting their hands on Venezuelan oil. And, you know, there's another angle to this whole Venezuela thing that I just find really disturbing. And, you know, the U.S. government comes out not long ago and they admit that they have directed energy weapons. And then you see members of the Trump administration coming out and saying they used directed energy weapons during this attack on Venezuela. And they try to frame it around, at least in the media, they try to frame it around, hey, this is a message to Iran. We can topple your regime whenever we want to. People will be bleeding from the eyes. They'll be bleeding from the mouth. We're going to send in sound waves, directed energy weapons, goy beams. We're all just going to beam it down on you, and we're going to overthrow your government. And I don't think it's really a message to the Iranians. I think they sent a message to the American people with that. You know, they've told us for years it's a conspiracy theory that directed energy weapons even exist, just like they told us it was a conspiracy theory that the oil was going to go to a bunch of Jews or that the oil was going to go to Israel, and now that's exactly where it's going. Well, now they tell us straight up, we use directed energy weapons, we use hypersonic technology, we use never-before-seen military weapons against the Venezuelans to effect this regime change, to cut off the lights, to kidnap Nicolas Maduro. I mean, this was an EMP attack, a DEW attack, things that, again, we were told for years are just conspiracy theories. They don't really exist. And I really look at that, especially now, as that was a message to the American people. Hey, look, you can have your little riots in the streets, you can have your protests, you can have your J6, you can have your whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, when we deploy directed energy weapons against you, we're in charge, we're in command. And it just sits with me. I've been thinking about this a lot, and it just kind of sits with me as like this was a message straight up to the American people of the U.S. government at this point, you know, sees itself as all powerful, arm in arm, hand in hand with their friends in Israel, and they'll kill or maim or steal from whoever they want to, whenever they want to, because they have acquired the technology to do it. And, you know, with their deploying of an AI surveillance state, I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with it as well. It's, hey, they install the AI surveillance state, and then when they want to goy beam you, they'll send in the goy beam. Benjamin Netanyahu talks about drone striking American citizens on American soil because they say the wrong thing on the internet. Well, hey, now they've got a laser for your ass when you say the wrong thing on the internet. So the entire situation, I say all that to say, the entire situation around Venezuela, I think, is extremely, extremely dark on many levels here. But look, speaking of Israel, we talked about this guy yesterday, and I think this is a big, important update here. Ori Solomon, the Israeli citizen who was running a bio lab in Las Vegas. They're saying there were samples of HIV in this place, samples of Ebola, countless other
if you want to know where that came from,
neighborhood in Las Vegas.
You're looking
he
at
was arrested, and now guess what? He was released by a Jewish judge by the name of Elena Yucha. However you say these funny-looking Hebrew names, you know, they started speaking Hebrew again 140 years ago. They basically invented the language, and they started giving themselves
even he
Hebrew
said
names.
they
So you could probably say
invented
it any
the
number of
language.
ways, and it still wouldn't be correct.
Because it's gibberish
It's just
that
a
they
made-up
speak,
language.
not
But
the
either
real
way,
Hebrew.
A Jewish judge has released Ori Solomon in Las Vegas. And, you know, I just want to point out here, this is a Trump-appointed judge, and we also saw a Trump-appointed Jewish judge in the very same state of Nevada release Tom Alexandrovich, the Jewish pervert, who was online looking for disabled American children.
You see, this is all part of his informant duties. This is part of bringing these people down, letting Ghislaine Maxwell out of prison, letting the biolab guy out of prison, letting the Jewish guy who was part of the Israeli cybersecurity directorate right out of jail after he tried to rape an American boy, a handicapped American child. Just let him out. This is part of his duties as, you know, keeping the enemies closer, exposing them, shining a light on them. You're too stupid to understand this, Goy. Don't you understand? It's the Hegelian dialectic, Frankie. Yeah, this is way too complex for you. Trump is absolutely exposing these people. He's an informant to the FBI. He has to let them out of prison. Otherwise, they won't go doing the dastardly deeds that we need Trump to catch them in the act of doing.
Yeah, now he's got to give them all jobs in the White House. You know, like you said, keep your enemies close. He's got to give them all jobs in the White House so he can keep an eye on them. Maybe that's why Howard Lutnick is in the White House right now. You know, that's the narrative that I'm getting today.
And we've been exposing Esau for a long time.
Has admitted that he took his children to Epstein Island, the home of a known pedophile, of a convicted pedophile sex trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. Howard Lutnick takes his kids there. He denies it. He lies to the American people, and now he's put under oath in Congress, so he has to tell the truth. And he says, yeah, you know what? The Epstein files were right. The emails are true. I took my kids to this place. And now that's the narrative that's coming out of this. Exactly what you just said. It's hey, Howard Lutnick's a bad guy, and Donald Trump has to keep an eye on Howard Lutnick, so he's made him the Secretary of Commerce. You know, the most visible Secretary of Commerce in American history. I mean, you could go back through administrations, and I think the average guy actually way above.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how many children
who the Secretary of
Pete
Commerce
Hegseth molested.
It's a position that people don't hear a lot about, but Howard Lutnick.
They're all child molesters.
And all of a sudden, it's the most visible position in the entire U.S. government, it would seem, because this guy.
I mean, he's on the tarmac with the president. He's in the Oval Office with the president. Yep. Anytime Trump is speaking from Mar-a-Lago, you see Howard Lutnick snickering and sneering in the background, especially when the Epstein files are brought up. All of that, all of the rape and the torture and the murder and the cannibalism and the buried bodies, all of the molestation, all of the trafficking, it's just a big, funny joke to that Jew.
Yep. Yeah, it is. It is. He laughs hysterically every time it's brought up. And even today, as he was coming out of his hearings on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, the greatest pedophiles of all are Amalek.
He's just got this sick, twisted little smirk on his face, like he's about to burst out in laughter at any moment. It's like this guy just gets off all over himself every single time the thought of Jeffrey Epstein and the things that they did to
even actress Shirley Temple exposed how the Hollywood cabal works.
I've got an idea for the White House.
And the things she had to
Actually, this is a
perform.
great idea for Turning Point USA. They love shekels. If we're going to go ahead and, like raise a bunch of money and, we're just going to bring like hundreds of millions of dollars in, forget about the Super Bowl. I propose a TPUSA sponsored, and we could kind of like work out a deal where the Stu Peters Network kind of shares in some of these proceeds, because I'd like to direct some funds in a different area. Erica Kirk can buy another glittery pantsuit or something. But I would think that maybe a death match, a cage match, a sponsored fight between myself, yours truly, and Howard Lutnick. I would love that. I think it would be a great event to have at, we could do it at Mar-a-Lago, we could do it.
Yep, a celebrity death match. And like everything else, these people need to be put to death. And Yahushua is going to put these people to death. He's also going to put a lot of you two-thirds to death. Those that are still with Esau, you ain't going to be able to lie to Yahushua like you do our others, It's like, yeah, okay, you might pull the wool over us. We're going to have traitors in our camp. This is the year of apostasy and sellouts, right? We're going to have a lot of traitors, but yeah, you might pull the wool over our eyes. You ain't going to pull the wool over Yahweh's eyes. Yeah, you're going to claim that you did all this stuff in his name, He's going to say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, for I never knew you. You know? See, like everything else though, everybody's being found out. You have your lot, and you will be caught in your lot. So if you were a deceiver then, you were a liar then, you're going to be exposed as a liar. You know? And Yahushua is allowing this devil Esau to be exposed every day, his own tell on him. Iraq receives 5,000 ISIS fighters from Syria. Well, isn't that convenient? DC began operation to transfer ISIS to Iraq after US-backed Syrian government released tens of thousands of extremist prisoners during its assault against northern Syria. Iraq has received close to 5,000 ISIS members since the start of the U.S. military campaign to relocate the extremist group of fighters, probably for their attack against Iran to try to disable them from within, like they did to Syria. The transfer of terrorist prisoners from Syria to Iraq is ongoing in coordination with the global coalition. Oh, yeah. So that way, you know, they can keep them in there. Anytime they need to use them, they can go into another country. So that's what they do. They use Al-Qaeda. They use ISIS to go into another country and fuck it up from within. That's what happened to Libya. That's what happened to Syria. That's what happened to Iraq. You know, they use Al-Qaeda. They just don't call it Al-Qaeda. They beefed the name to ISIS in 2014, but they're the same terrorist. So like everything else though, the U.S. military announced a campaign to transfer ISIS to Iraqi facilities. DC said up to 7,000 ISIS members would be relocated, yet thousands more remain on the loose. Yep, they're set free. So, like everything else. So, and here's what's going on with the prisons in Iraq that these ISIS members are sent from. There's no room. They don't have enough room. Well, this overflow is done on purpose, so there will be prison breaks. Yep. And like everything else, though, where do you think that, what country needs to be dismantled? I mean, Iraq, the U.S. already controls through its proxies. What is the remaining country that they need to control? Believe it or not, they're not after Turkey. They're after Iran, you know, because Turkey is too strong against them, you know, but they want to try to get Iran from within because that's what Netanyahu, King Bibi, wants this week.
We're shifting to the Middle East now. Instability in Syria has caused a transfer of former ISIS fighters from the nation's infamous Al-Hol prison to facilities in Iraq. But the neighboring country's penitentiary system is already overflowing with former militants, including many foreigners. Iraq's former human rights minister told RT about the challenges of repatriating such potentially dangerous people.
Iraqi prisons are overcrowded, and most of these people have committed criminal acts inside Iraq itself. So they will be prosecuted in Iraq. But Iraq has taken a few hundred up to now, and the process is ongoing, and they will be distributed into various prisons in southern and central part of Iraq up to now. But Iraq wants also from the European governments and other governments certain guarantee that they will be willing to accept these people to be taken back to their countries. For how long we in Iraq should hold these dangerous elements, whether they are the ISIS men or Al-Khansa, as they used to call it, the ISIS women, or their avant-gardes, as they call them, Ashbal al-Khilafa, the children of the Caliphate or the avant-gardes of the Caliphate. They are all indoctrinated and are dangerous elements. So who will pay for having these people for years to be fed in Iraqi prisons? These are issues that Iraq is discussing and negotiating with the various governments, actually.
The risk of war with Iran is growing despite the talks. Yeah, because King Bibi is meeting with Trump right now. Current negotiations between Tehran and DC are an opportunity, but a narrow one, surrounded by sharp edges. Resumption of contacts between DC and Tehran in early February 2026 reopened a narrow diplomatic corridor that many observers already wrote off. The first indicate Iran and Muscat, mediated by Oman, produced by kind of cautious mutually signals. Both sides want room to keep talking. For a region that has lived for years with the expectation of sudden escalation, even that is nothing. Still, hope is not the same as probability. The structural problem is that the parties are starting from positions that remain far apart. So, like everything else, though, we all know that it's a pretext to attack Iran. And even they know that, too. Iran war threat continues as King Bibi attempts to sway Trump during D.C. visit. Israeli Netanyahu met with Witkoff and Kushner ahead of talks with President of Iran diplomacy as Trump continues to make war threats. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, or as elder brother Malcolm calls him, Benjamin not a Jew, met senior U.S. officials in D.C. Tuesday ahead of the 7th meeting with Donald Trump since his second term as U.S. puppet. Netanyahu held talks at the Blair House in D.C. There's your real Blair Witch Project. Alongside Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law and former advisor Kushner, according to reports with discussions apparently focused on D.C.'s negotiation with Iran. The meeting with Trump had initially been expected next week was brought forward at King Bibi's request after the start of renewed U.S.-Iran negotiations in Muscat. According to Israeli media, King Bibi sought to secure the meeting urgently to guarantee Israeli interests amid fears D.C. could strike a deal with Tehran. So, you know, like everything else, so it's a pretext. King Bibi seeks U.S. muscular action against Iran in the 7th meeting with Trump. So this is exactly what took place there. I am now leaving for the U.S. for my 7th trip to meet with President Trump since he was elected second term, Netanyahu said prior to his departure to D.C. They are literally shutting down highways for Netanyahu's arrival in D.C. Before leaving the Israeli state, King Bibi told reporters that Iran is the first and foremost issue and he will raise with Trump. So, like everything else, though, you know, they all met together, they all sucked each other off, and I'm sure they found little boys to fondle, too. Iran warns U.S. not to be swayed by King Bibi ahead of talks. You know, like everything else, though, you know who their masters are. And Trump, you know, unless they want to continue to bring out these allegations against him, you know, this being an informant thing, you know, story is circulating, right? You know, that, oh, Donald Trump was an FBI informant, and that's why he's seen molesting little children, you know, and, you know, has all these bitches, you know, bring these bitches as offerings to the pedophile. Iran warned the U.S. against following Israeli influence to its foreign policy as tensions persist ahead of renewed diplomatic engagements. He said ongoing threats and sanctions require Tehran to exercise extreme caution in the diplomatic process, but insisted that Iran remains committed to diplomacy and bases its positions on international law and legitimate rights. So, like everything else, though, that's what they're saying ahead of the meeting, which I think the meeting took place yesterday anyways. Iran renews warning about Israeli intentions amid diplomatic engagement with the U.S. Agashi describes Netanyahu as a warmonger who doesn't like peace or diplomacy. In the past 2 years, he has attacked 7 countries in the region, the foreign minister said, noting that last target was Qatar, an ally to the U.S. and a friend to the U.S. and the West. King Bibi has no solution in his mind but war, and has repeatedly tried to drag the U.S. into war with Iran, he added. Well, that's exactly it. The least the flock shall draw them out, shall make their habitations desolate because of them. And we're seeing that play out. Women and children face abuse in Syria's al-Roj camp amid chaotic handover. Detainees of rights groups warn of escalating violence and uncertainty as authority over the camp shifts. So, like everything else, so, you know, what's happening is, of course, this is talking about the transfer of ISIS in northern Syria over to the country being run by ISIS, right? because the Syrian Democratic Forces were heroes and all this bullshit, right? They're not. They were nothing more than terrorist groups trying to look to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad, which they got their way anyways. It was also a way for the U.S. to keep its oil, but pretend to fight terrorism, pretend to fight Daesh, when they were supplying Daesh, ISIS all along and protecting them. Concerns mounting for the safety of women and children held in prison camps for detainees suspected of links to ISIS as Kurdish authorities cede control of the camps to the new Syrian government. Women and children were being forced out of their tents, stripped of warm clothing, and doused with water in freezing temperatures during the nightly raids, she said. Some women, she said, have been beaten inside their tents until they lost consciousness. They're demanding $2,000 for the return of the children they've taken. I mean, this is really nice. I mean, this is what you would call a well, this is what the U.S. had wanted. I'm trying to think. A transitional Syria, right? A transitional government. That's what they wanted, and there you have it. Former senior U.S. diplomat urges Congress to keep troops inside of Syria. You know, because like everything else, though, we need to stay so that way you can keep its oil. James Jeffrey acknowledged Syrian President al-Jilani had the same goals as the U.S. when he was a designated terrorist. Well, the goals are to control Syria's oil. His remarks come as the Trump administration is weighing in on leaving Syria altogether now that it is under the new president who has made inroads with the U.S. president himself. Yeah, because they all compared notes and shared cologne. Jeffrey also suggested maintaining diplomats and staff could be moved in and out of Syria until the situation stabilizes. But you got the transitional government, so you're cool. And that the U.S. knows what's going to happen to ISIS prisoners and their families, yeah. Yeah. This push is a part of the Syrian President al-Jilani's bid to disarm militias that formed during the 14-year war and fold fighters into the national army. Should the Kurdish-led SDF indeed collapse, the U.S. soldiers would have no need to stay in Syria. Well, like everything else, though, they're trying to find an excuse to stay in Syria, because guess what? This is the Valley of Jehoshaphat. See, like everything else, there he is. You know, and more people, have pointed this out, that he was an ISIS member. Now he's the president, because they just changed him a little bit. You know, they gave him a nice beard trim, but that is al-Jilani, leader of ISIS. So, like everything else, well, you have a pedophile in power in D.C., so it's no wonder that the rape and murder and everything else, well, until this man be taken out of power, right? You're just going to see nothing but corruption worldwide, because that's the way it is. There is no peace, with Esau in power, So like everything else, we have to keep on reiterating it, that Yahushua is coming back to take his elect out of here, but also to judge this place. But these are the things that he warned about would happen, as this is the year of apostasy and of sellouts. Matthew chapter 24, verse 4. When Yahushua answered them and said, "See that no man leads you astray, or no one leads you astray. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am the anointed, and they will lead many astray. And you will hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet." So, the end hasn't happened yet, but we're getting closer. Then that's what we always tell you. We're getting closer. Certain other things have to take place before the return of Yahushua. They have to mandate the MOTB, but we're seeing all these other build-ups, right? For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. That's unrest, that's civil war, that's disagreement with the government, that's changes in the government, that's militias forming. And there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. So you could say that we're at the beginning of birth pains, and all this stuff's just going to keep on intensifying. It's going to keep on intensifying all these things. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. They're going to make an example of you. You will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Is it JC? No, everybody accepts JC. Is it Yahweh? Is it Yahweh? No, everybody accepts Yahweh. Everybody accepts Yahusha or Yeshua. So, no, it would be, in fact, having the names Yahweh and Yahushai. Then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another. Yep. So, we're seeing all that. You know, many people are turning against each other just because they think a little differently, you know. And we're seeing that division. We're seeing that form. All this is going to intensify. And we're in this year now, the year of apostasy and the sellouts. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. Because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. In other words, keeps their tent, their post there. That still holds on to their post, even though the wind is blowing very, very hard, will not be caught in the whirlwind. You know, even though it seems like, but guess what? You're going to be spared in the very end if you keep on holding on to this truth. Then the gospel of this kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the entire world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So we're going to see all of this unfold very soon. So hopefully this has been edifying. For that I want to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abal Babal. Brakathum, Jehovah Elect, Shalom.